Right now, in Your Voice, Your Vote.
I'm looking for someone, a leader, who is going to keep those prices down.
While many are struggling to make ends meet,
I want to stay in California, and I need it to be fixed.
now there's a chance for a new direction.
I want to see their logic, how they're going to get to their goal.
I'd like to see integrity.
As voters cast their ballots,
what are you going to do about the cost of living, the cost of gasoline?
where the top candidates for governor stand on their promises for change. Thank you so much for joining us for Your Voice, Your Vote, the California governor's race. I'm Alex Bell, and for the next hour, we are introducing you to the top candidates in the June 2nd primary. While more than 60 names for governor will appear on your ballot, only the top 2 vote-getters will advance to the general election this November. Now, these 8 candidates, 2 Republicans and 6 Democrats, are considered the frontrunners of this race. Over the next hour, you will hear from them on affordability, homelessness, and crime in the state. My interviews will appear in the order on your screen, drawn at random. We will start with Republican candidate Steve Hilton and end with Democratic candidate Javier Becerra. I spoke with each of these candidates at their state conventions in San Francisco and San Diego. While neither the California Republican Party nor the California Democratic Party endorsed a candidate for governor, polling has shown a shifting race. This is one of the latest polls commissioned by the California Democratic Party to help candidates really assess their viability in this race. In this poll, Steve Hilton is now tied with Javier Becerra, each with 18% of likely voters. Following Becerra is Chad Bianco, Tom Steyer, Katie Porter, and there still is room for movement. About 14% of voters remain undecided, down from 24% in May. Now, Steve Hilton has consistently led polls ahead of the primary. He is a conservative political commentator, appearing most notably on Fox News, and he was a senior advisor to a former British prime minister before moving to California. Like all the candidates you will hear from, I asked him why he is running for governor, also where he stands on California's cost of living, homelessness, and how the state is handling crime. So for people that are meeting you for the first time, why are you deciding to run to be California's next governor?
So I love this state so much. I moved here from England in 2012 with my wife and my 2 sons, taught at Stanford University, started a business, had a new career in the media. I've lived the California dream. It's an amazing place. There's nowhere better than California, but you can see how badly things have got off track. It's so expensive to live here. It's such a hassle to run a business. And when I think about my business experience, the fact that before moving here, I worked in the government in the UK, senior advisor to the Prime Minister, working to make change happen in government. I've got the business experience, the government reform experience, and the policy expertise to really make a change. And so that's why I decided to throw my hat in the ring.
Now, if you are to be elected, what would be your top 3 priorities your first year in office?
Well, I can give you one word that captures all of it, which is Califordable.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know, we have to make our state Califordable, but underneath that, there's one very quick change we can make, which is on vehicle registration. I know it sounds like a narrow thing, but it drives people crazy. In other states, it costs under $100 in most other states to register your vehicle. People are paying in California $400, $500, $600, $700, many people over $1,000. I've even had some people say it's over $2,000. We can change all that by getting rid of all the hidden taxes and fees and have a basic flat rate registration of $71. So that's a very simple thing. But above that, I'm going to send a budget to the legislature with my main priorities. $3 gas, cut your electric bill in half, your first $100,000 tax-free, a home you can afford to buy.
Now, California has spent billions of dollars trying to address the homelessness issue, yet it is still a major problem. What would you do differently if you were to be elected?
So we have to realize that this is an avoidable problem. It's out. You don't see this in other states. You don't see it in other countries. And so we've got to get to grips with it, and it's actually very simple. I've got a 3-point plan. Number 1, enforce the law. It's illegal to camp on the streets. All these homeless encampments we see, they're all against the law. So we should enforce the law and remove the homeless encampments. And as governor, if local politicians won't do it, I will use state law enforcement resources to remove the homeless encampments. Number 2, we have to get people into addiction treatment. 80% plus of people who are homeless have either drug or alcohol addiction or severe mental health problems. So we have to get them treatment, and so they can get their lives back on track. And the third part is mental health. We don't have enough mental health provision in California. As governor, I would increase it so we can get people the help that they need.
And last question here. Do you think California has gone too far, not far enough, or struck the right balance when it comes to criminal justice reform?
I think it's gone way too far in the wrong direction. And so now you've seen, for example, with Gavin Newsom's prison closure program, tens of thousands of dangerous, violent criminals released into the community or transferred to county jails, which means that they are overcrowded. Have a system where you're not held accountable if you break the law. And so that's just one example, the prison closure program. As governor, I would reverse that, increase prison capacity so that we can make sure that those who commit crimes, serious crimes, are behind bars, which also gives us an opportunity to do proper rehabilitation so we reduce reoffending and keep our communities safe.
And a quick look at some of Steve Hilton's endorsements. He has the backing of President Donald Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy, who has been running for governor in Ohio. Local Republican Congressman Tom McClintock also endorsed Hilton early in on the race. Now, next coming up, we have San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan, the Democratic candidate for governor, entered the race in January, months later than some of his opponents. Before becoming mayor, he also served on San Jose City Council and co-founded and led a tech company focused on civic engagement. Now, here's where he stands on California's cost of living, homelessness, and also how the state is handling crime. For people that have never met you before, talk to me about why you decided to run for governor.
I jumped into this race because we have to do better in California, and I know that we can because in San Jose we have led the way for the state in reducing crime, reducing homelessness, and like most Californians, I'm frustrated that over the last 6 years, spending in the state has gone up by 75%. And the outcomes are not improved by 75%. In some areas, things have gotten worse. We have to do better. I know that we can, but it's not easy. We have to build the political will to hold government accountable for reducing the bureaucracy, eliminating the programs and policies that don't work, and make sure we're delivering for working and middle-class families.
If you were to be elected, what would be your top 3 priorities your first year in office?
My focus is on reducing costs and increasing incomes. On the cost side, largely because of the amount of bureaucracy, process, fees that we have imposed in government, we have the highest housing costs, the highest energy costs in the country. We need to reduce the amount of bureaucracy and regulation in the state. We have to attract investment and good, high-paying jobs. And right now, there is a real challenge we're facing in the state where we are demonizing and over-regulating. It's too expensive to do anything, so jobs are going elsewhere. And we have to get back to basics to bring back jobs and increase incomes while reducing costs, particularly for housing and energy.
We know that California has spent billions of dollars trying to address the homelessness issue, but it still persists. You can definitely still see it on a lot of city streets, even here in San Francisco. What exactly would you do differently to address this issue?
Well, we need to stop funding failure. In San Jose, we've taken a very different approach, and we have the results to show it. We've built a nation-leading model around prevention, short-term rental assistance with case management to help people when they fall on hard times, to prevent homelessness. Those are the best dollars we can spend. We've invested in shelter and interim housing, and when it's available, we require that people use it, and we get people stabilized indoors, connected to services sooner so that they don't become chronically homeless. When we get upstream of what we see on our streets and intervene earlier and more effectively, we reduce a lot of suffering and we actually save a lot of money.
Do you think California has gone too far, not far enough, or struck the right balance when it comes to criminal justice reform?
Well, it really depends on the crime. I don't believe that our jails and prisons should be our de facto mental health hospitals. I do think we need to build mental health hospitals again and have inpatient treatment and get people into the care that they need. But as we focused on reducing the jail population, we didn't do a very good job of creating an alternative, other interventions, other programs that work. We have mental health diversion in the state that is not working very well, where people are being diverted from a criminal pathway into a program where there's very little accountability and we're seeing repeat crime. And when someone's coming back and cycling through a second time, a third time, that should be a signal to all of us that something's broken.
All right, here's a quick look at some of Matt Mahan's endorsements. Many have local ties, including Assemblymember Maggie Krell. He also has the backing of Congressman Ami Bera and Elk Grove Mayor Bobby Singh Allen, who noted his fight for Prop 36 to reverse parts of Prop 47 to create harsher penalties for repeat theft and harsh drug offenses. Now stick with us, because coming up after the break, I sit down with Chad Bianco, why the Riverside County Sheriff wants to be the state's next governor. But first, here's ABC 10's Becca Habegger with a note about voting in the June primary.
Primary election day is Tuesday, June 2nd. Here are key deadlines when it comes to registering to vote. May 18th is the last day to register to vote in the primary election. If you've recently moved or you're not sure if you're registered, you can check your voter status on the California Secretary of State's website. You'll be able to see if your registration is active and in which county you're registered. Now, if you did not register before the deadline, there's still a way for you to vote. Beginning May 19th, same-day registration will be available through Election Day. This is when voters can conditionally register to vote a provisional ballot. Basically, this is a safety net for Californians who missed the deadline to either register to vote or to update their voter registration information. The Secretary of State has a link to a list of early voting locations where you can complete the same-day voter registration process, or you can do it on Election Day itself.
Welcome back in. Californians are making some big choices right now in the June primary to help decide who could become the state's next governor. And while the final decision comes in November, for now, 6 leading Democratic hopefuls and 2 Republicans are in this race. I sat down with each of them asking why they should be the state's next governor. So next in our series of interviews is Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. The Republican candidate for governor says that he has confronted the realities of California's struggling public safety system. So here's what Bianco said about California's cost of living, homelessness, and also how the state is handling crime. All right, so for people who are meeting you for the first time, why are you deciding to run to be California's next governor?
Because I know that if we have a chance of bringing California back for all of Californians, it's going to have to be me that does it. I have a lifetime, my entire adulthood has been making everyone else's life around me better, sacrificing myself at times to make everyone else's life better outside of politics. And I'm taking that same mentality into Sacramento. I think that's what we have been missing. That's what Californians are starving for, is a leader with integrity, with leadership ability, with honesty, to be honest with Californians, but more importantly, to represent everyone.
Now, if you were to be elected, what would be your top 3 priorities your first year in office?
We absolutely must bring public safety back to the forefront of California. We cannot, even if it's cheap to live here, if it's not safe to live here, nothing works. So public safety has to be number 1, and then we have to completely reverse the government-influenced and the government-caused cost of living in California. All of the regulations that are harming our businesses, our consumers, all have to be removed. Our oil industry, we have to be oil independent in our state. We have to be building independent, build homes that we can afford to buy, and it's all through the regulatory process. Regulations have to be removed for the cost of living. Our education system has to be fixed and remodeled. Our infrastructure, our electricity, our power grid, our water supply, our reservoir situation, our farming, the ability for our farmers to farm.
Now, we know that California has spent billions of dollars trying to really fix the homelessness issue, but yet the problem really persists. We see it on our streets and everywhere.
Yeah.
What would you do differently if you were to be elected?
Well, we have spent billions of dollars enabling what we see on the street. This is a homeless industrial complex that the money is being used for what money is used for, and that's to make people rich. It is not benefiting the people that are living on the streets and dying on the streets. We have to treat this for what it is. We have to call it what it is, and we have to get these people the help they need for their drug and alcohol addiction and their mental health illness. And just as importantly, the combination of both. This is not about homes. It's never been about homes. And until we address the real issue and we start acting like true, compassionate human beings, caring about these people that are dying on the streets, we're never going to solve it.
And I do want to talk about criminal justice reform. Do you think California has gone too far, not far enough, or struck the right balance when it comes to criminal justice reform?
Well, the entire state knows we have gone way too far. And again, a play on words of calling it reform. By saying the word reform, we believe that it convinces us that something's broken and we have to fix it. But the reality of California's criminal justice reform is an absolute sick and twisted love affair with criminals. They are doing everything they can for the last 15 years to enable criminal behavior, to prevent law enforcement from keeping you safe, all in this unhealthy addiction to criminals at the expense of law-abiding Californians and truly at the expense of victims. And we have to start being honest with what we are doing. We have to hold people accountable for victimizing us. If you're going to victimize us, you're going to suffer the consequences of what people suffer in a civilized society, and that is jail time. If you are going to choose to break the law, you are going to go to jail. If you get out and break the law again, you're going to jail for longer.
As for who is endorsing Chad Bianco, many local sheriffs and county Republican parties are throwing their support behind him. You can see there on your screen. Bianco also has support from many Southern California lawmakers at the local, state, and federal levels, including Republican Congressman Darrell Issa and Ken Calvert. Coming up next, I sit down with Tony Thurmond, why the state's superintendent of public instruction wants to be the state's next governor. The race for California governor is wide open, but one issue is taking center stage: affordability. From housing to gas to everyday costs. Our To The Point team is breaking down where the top candidates stand. Stream California's governor race affordability right now on the ABC 10 app. Welcome back in. We are interviewing the top candidates for California's next governor. And next up is State Superintendent Tony Thurmond. Now, he has worked in local government, on a school board, and in the Richmond City Council before being elected to the California State Assembly. In 2019, he also became the state's chief of public schools. And here's where he stands on California's cost of living, homelessness, and also how the state is handling crime. For people that are meeting you for the first time, why are you deciding to run for governor?
Yeah, you know, our state's facing the biggest affordability crisis ever. So many challenges around homelessness. And I want to give working Californians a tax credit so that you all have more money for those, expenses like groceries, gas, and housing. I love this state. I've served it for 18 years as an elected official. I believe I have the experience and a vision to serve, and I want to help our state be better.
Now, if you are elected, what are your top 3 priorities going to be the first year in office?
We have to make sure that people can afford to have a home, and so as governor, I'm going to provide down payment assistance programs. I have a very unique housing plan that will allow us to build 2 million units of housing over the next few years. It uses surplus property that exists on school campuses in every county in our state. There are 75,000 acres of land ready for development, so it will be housing, it will be helping our homeless. As I said, I'm working to get $10 billion for building affordable housing and helping the 10,000 unaccompanied homeless minor youth who are on their own, who need help. I support a single-payer health care program and fighting back against Donald Trump. You know, this reckless immigration policy that we have seen is devastating our communities. I'm working on legislation that would put a tax on any company that operates an ICE detention center. And as governor, I'll work with Congress to abolish ICE and to create a pathway to citizenship for those who just want to work and pay taxes here.
California has spent billions addressing homelessness, but yet it still remains a huge problem in our state. What would you do differently to address homelessness?
I think there has to be accountability in how those dollars get spent, and we have to make sure if there's any waste or abuse that we put a spotlight on that and take care of that. So I think that for every dollar we spend for programs for those who are unhoused, we have to require that the participants participate in mental health and substance abuse programs. I'm also working on legislation right now that would put a measure on the ballot for Californians to vote on that, if passed, would give us $10 billion to build more housing. And I think a big portion of that, if passed, would need to go to helping those who are homeless.
Do you think that California has gone too far, not far enough, or struck the right balance when it comes to criminal justice reform in the state?
You know, when I was on the city council in Richmond, that city was considered the most dangerous city per capita in the state of California. And we approached it in a way where we had a combination approach for how we address crime and safety. And today, violent crime has been significantly reduced. We did this through adding more police. You have to have police in your community Someone has to answer the call when a crime has been committed. But you can't police or arrest your way out of the problems that we are seeing. You have to also have intervention programs. And as a council member, as a legislator, I've grown programs to provide paid employment training opportunities as a way of keeping people out of engaging in criminal activity. You do have to have diversion programs that give someone a chance at a second chance. But we have to recognize that there has to be accountability for people's actions,
Here are some of Tony Thurmond's endorsements for governor, including the California Faculty Association, who represents California State University employees. Oakland Mayor and former Congressmember Barbara Lee also endorse him. He also has the backing of dozens of school board trustees and other lower level government endorsements, including West Sacramento Mayor Martha Guerrero. Coming up, I sit down with Katie Porter, why the former Congresswoman wants to be the next governor. Plus, former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa also competing for the job, his response to the biggest problems facing the state right now.
This election, the big battle for Congress in California. As Prop 50 changes the maps, who's running where? We're sitting down with the candidates. Don't miss Your Voice, Your Vote. Local congressional races, Saturday, May 23rd at 10 p.m., only on ABC 10 and the ABC 10 app.
Thank you so much for joining us for Your Voice, Your Vote, the California governor's race. I'm Alex Bell, and we are introducing you to the top 8 candidates running for governor. They all want your vote in the June 2nd primary. And look, more than 60 names will appear on your ballot for this race for governor, but only the top 2 vote getters will advance to the general election this November. We are talking to these 2 Republicans and 6 Democrats who are considered the frontrunners of this race. And to keep things fair, we drew these names at random for these interviews. So far, we have already introduced you to Steve Hilton, Matt Mahan, Chad Bianco, and Tony Thurmond. Next up is former Congresswoman Katie Porter. Now, Katie Porter served 3 terms in Congress after flipping a red seat to blue back in 2018. She describes herself as a consumer protection advocate and a teacher. And here's where she stands on California's cost of living, homelessness, and also how the state is handling crime. For people that are meeting you for the first time, why are you deciding to run for governor of California?
I'm running for governor of California to bring down costs for regular Californians. Affordability has become a big buzzword, but people don't need politicians telling them that life is unaffordable. They know. I'm a single mom of 3 teenagers. I push the grocery cart. I pay the bills. I fill up my minivan with gas. So I know what it's like to see your expenses go up and dollars not just stretch far enough. Affordability has been my life's work, studying families pushed into bankruptcy by medical debt or job loss, running a statewide foreclosure prevention program for then Attorney General Kamala Harris. So we need big solutions on affordability. People aren't leaving California because they're $5 or $10 short. They're leaving California because they are hundreds and hundreds of dollars away from being able to take care of their family the way they want.
And if you were to be elected, what would be your top 3 priorities your first year in office?
We have to look at what are families' biggest expenses. So they are housing, first and foremost. It takes up most of people's budget. So building more housing, building housing much more quickly. We build 2 years slower in California than in Colorado. We can do better. We're the most innovative state in the world, in the country, so we can innovate in how we build housing. Different construction techniques, different materials. My second priority is free childcare for every Californian. You can talk to any kind of economist from the far left to the far right, and they will all say that bringing down the cost of childcare is the biggest thing we could do to make our economy grow and accelerate. And then the third thing is we talk about affordability, and I've taken on big corporations and greedy corporations with my whiteboard in Congress, but one of the things we can do for affordability is change government's role in it. So to that end, I will eliminate state income tax for Californians making less than $100,000. That is a real affordability solution. We can deliver it right away.
And I do want to talk about homelessness. California has spent billions trying to address this big issue. What would you do differently to address homelessness?
It's really hard to solve a problem when the problem's getting bigger. So we have to focus on preventing people from becoming homeless. That is really important. Well, we're not right now. We're putting all of our money in helping those who have experienced long-term homelessness. Those people are important. They're Californians, and we need to get them into permanent supportive housing. But homelessness and the path to get there are other intervention points that are much less expensive and much more humane. So things like rapid rehousing, eviction prevention strategies, these work. They're cheaper and they stop people from ever having to live on our streets.
Do you think that California has gone too far, not far enough, or has struck the right balance when it comes to criminal justice reform?
We're definitely moving in the right direction on criminal justice reform, particularly in terms of looking back at what are the consequences of our three-strike law. In terms of retail theft, which has been a big issue, in terms of street crime, prevention is always going to be the first strategy, because it's not just about catching the person and punishing them and they commit a crime. We all think that should happen. It is about making sure that people feel confident that they can walk down the street safely. They can go to a playground with their kids and be safe. We've passed Prop 36. That's focused on punishment. We need punishment, but we really need to dig in on prevention and making our streets feel safe.
And here's a look at some of Katie Porter's endorsements. She has the support of Congresswoman Elizabeth Warren, who is a mentor to Porter. Porter is a former Harvard Law School student of hers. Emily's List and a number of unions also endorsed Katie Porter for governor, including the United Auto Workers and the National Union of Healthcare Workers. She also received an endorsement from the Sacramento Bee early in May. Former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa is also hoping for your vote in the June primary. Before becoming mayor, he was on the LA City Council. He also led the California State Assembly in the 1990s, and he calls himself a proven problem solver. Now, here's where he stands on California's cost of living, homelessness, and also how the state is handling crime. For people that are meeting you for the first time, why would you say that you're deciding to run for California governor?
I'm a proven problem solver. You know, I've said that this state has given me more than I could have ever imagined. My grandpa came with a shirt on his back from León, Guanajuato, Mexico, with a dream. I tell folks, never in my lifetime did I ever think I'd be Speaker of the California State Assembly or Mayor of Los Angeles. But the one thing I know, we also face big challenges. Challenge number one is affordability. Challenge number two, right with number one, is the threat to our democracy posed by Donald Trump. We need a proven problem solver. Everybody's going to talk well, including in these interviews, but I'm somebody that's actually done it, and that's what I'm running on.
Now, if you were to be elected, what would be your top three priorities your first year in office?
Well, priority number one is to make sure that we're living within our means. The next governor is going to face an $18 to $30 billion deficit, according to the legislative analyst. The idea that we just could cut our way out of that is just a pipe dream. Now, we need a grown-up who will make the tough calls, but we also got to grow our economy. We got to address the fact that this is the toughest state to do business in the United States of America. And small business is suffocating in this state. So we got to grow our economy, and we've got to address the big challenges, the challenge of homelessness, the challenge of safety, good schools. We need a governor that's going to focus on the basics. Get, common sense, competence, and a course correction.
What would you do differently to approach homelessness?
I built more affordable workforce and market rate housing than the 12 years before me. So we need a builder. But let's be clear. We can't keep on throwing money at the problem. We have to understand that we need to invest in what works and stop doing what doesn't. I've said I don't believe in criminalizing homelessness. I do believe in compassion, but I don't believe in chaos. And when you're selling drugs in front of cops, that's chaos. So we need an approach that focuses on providing a network of investment in services and housing. But the average house for homeless right now costs $850,000. Reporters can't pay that. Their children can't pay that. So what I've said is tiny homes are being built in LA for $100,000. We've got to be smart about how we expend these resources and not just throw money at the problem.
Let's talk about criminal justice reform. Do you think California has gone too far, not far enough, or has struck the right balance when it comes to criminal justice reform?
I led the fight against 3 strikes you're out when I was in the legislature. I'm against the death penalty. But I tell people, I believe in accountability. When you keep on stealing and you're on drugs and you get arrested and you refuse drug treatment, the first time, the second time, the third time, you're going to jail. That's why I supported Prop 36. You know, we can't be ideologues with these things. The next governor's #1 priority has to be public safety. That means fire and police. We've got to focus on protecting the public, and I will, because I have a record on it.
And a quick look at some of Antonio Villaraigosa's endorsement for governor, former U.S. Senator Barbara Boxer, who was described as his campaign co-chair, and a number of unions and organizations. PORAC, California's largest law enforcement organization, and the California Federation of Labor Unions, who represented millions of workers in many different industries across the state. Coming up, I sit down with Tom Steyer, why the Bay Area billionaire wants to be the next governor of California. And Javier Becerra is looking to return to state government, why he says that he's the right person to lead our state. But first, here's ABC 10's Becca Habegger about voting early in the June primary.
Primary election day is Tuesday, June 2nd, but you can vote earlier than that. Registered voters should already be getting ballots in the mail. If you want to drop off your ballot at a vote center or official ballot drop box, it must be delivered by 8 p.m. on election day. If you want to mail it in, your ballot must be postmarked on or before June 2nd and received by your county elections office no later than June 9th, according to the Secretary of State's office. So where can you go to actually vote in person? Well, on May 22nd, Voters' Choice Act counties will start opening their vote centers. 30 of California's 58 counties are Voters' Choice Act counties, including in our area, Sacramento, Placer, Yolo, Nevada, El Dorado, and Stanislaus counties. These use an election model that allows voters to choose how, when, and where to cast their ballot. Voters can cast a ballot at any vote center within that county, and there are secure ballot drop-off locations throughout the county. Now, if you want to track the status of your ballot, you can use the Where's My Ballot tool through the Secretary of State's website. It can show where your ballot is mailed, received, and counted, and it is available in every county.
Welcome back in. Californians are making big choices right now in the June primary to help decide who should become the state's next governor. And while the final decision comes in November, for now, 6 leading Democratic hopefuls and 2 Republicans are in this race. I sat down with each of them asking why they should be our next governor. Now, next in our series of interviews is Tom Steyer. The Democratic candidate for governor is a billionaire businessman, a philanthropist, and environmentalist from the Bay Area. He says California is too expensive, and the problem won't be solved by the same politicians who got the state here. Here's where he stands on California's cost of living, homelessness, and how the state is handling crime.
For people that are meeting you for the first time, why are you deciding to run for governor of California?
Well, I'm running for governor because Californians can't afford to live in California anymore. The cost of living is at a place led by housing costs, but going to multiple parts of people's budgets, where people literally are leaving the state and literally can't pay the bills. And that is a huge government failure. And I think it's critical that the government address it, and the governor addresses it with urgency.
Now, if you were to be elected, what would be your top 3 priorities your first year in office?
The #1 issue about affordability is housing, because it's the biggest bill that everybody faces. It's up to 50% of your pay. So the first thing we're going to have to address is housing. One thing we can do in the short run is put in rent control, and I would do it. The second thing that I think is critical is, look, our electricity costs are a critical element of family costs. Californians pay twice as much for electricity as other people around the United States. That's unacceptable. I've talked about the need to have a different oversight at the Public Utilities Commission, and I've also talked about the idea of local competition for the electric monopolies that are actually providing that electricity. And the third thing that I would do that I think is very different from what everyone else is talking about, call a special election to close a corporate real estate tax loophole that's been on the books since 1978, that Donald Trump himself benefits from. By our estimate, we'll bring in $22 million a year to local governments for education and healthcare.
California has spent billions of dollars trying to fix the homelessness crisis, but yet you can see the problem really persists throughout the state. What would you do differently as governor?
So we have a homeless plan, which involves getting people into permanent housing, which takes on average 7 years and costs $750,000 a key. If you just take a step back and ask yourselves, can that possibly work? The answer is no. So one of the things I'm absolutely determined to do is to use emergency interim housing. Get people off the street. They don't have to be clean. They can bring their dog. There's, mutual, group dining, group laundry, and they're safe.
Do you believe that California has gone too far, not far enough, or has struck the right balance on criminal justice reform?
About 70% of Californians voted for Prop 36, and Prop 36 was basically a couple things, but one of the things it was hugely about was treatment instead of incarceration for nonviolent criminals. But it meant that actually the goal was going to be to rehabilitate, to prepare you for society, and that's the kind of thing I actually believe. For nonviolent criminals, well, the state has not funded it. Absolutely, we need to incarcerate violent people who are going to be a danger to people in their communities. But for people who aren't violent criminals, rehabilitating them, treating them, is a much more successful and effective way to deal with crime.
Here are just some of the people endorsing Tom Steyer for governor. Former candidate for governor and former state controller Betty Yee. She says that she knows Tom is going to be able to deliver. He also has a number of endorsements from Democratic state lawmakers and a number of unions, including the California Teachers Association, SEIU, who both threw their support behind Tom Steyer after supporting Eric Swalwell. Swalwell notably dropped out of the race following sexual assault allegations that Swalwell denies. And the candidate to see a major rise in the polls since March is Javier Becerra. Following frontrunner Eric Swalwell's departure from the race, Becerra has seen double-digit increases in some of this polling. Becerra has served at the state and federal levels as President Joe Biden's Health and Human Services Secretary, a former Los Angeles Congress member, former state attorney general, and former state assembly member. And he says that he wants to build, protect, and lead the state as governor. Here's where he stands on California's cost of living, homelessness, and how the state is handling crime.
For the people that are meeting you for the first time, why are you deciding to run for governor?
Alex, we have to return California to what I grew up with, where a construction worker with a 6th grade education and a clerical worker who didn't come to this country till she married my dad when she was 18 could actually send the 3 sisters I had and myself to college or the military. They could actually buy a house, a small house, and then they could retire, not in Utah or Idaho or Arizona, but here in California. We need that back. And I want young families to believe that with me as governor, that's what they'll have.
If elected, what are your top 3 priorities your first year in office?
Well, one has to be more housing. We have to build more housing. Everyone is saying that because it's absolutely true. We have to make it more affordable to live in California. 2, I believe healthcare is indispensable. And just because we have the man-made disasters coming from Washington, D.C., where Donald Trump is cutting access to healthcare through Medi-Cal, through the Affordable Care Act, we're not going backwards. We're going to continue to move forward to give people access to care at affordable prices. And then 3, I'm the first in my family to have a college education. I'm going to make sure that we continue to improve K through 12. And we start doing preschool, because we have to get kids ready to learn and ready to lead.
California spends billions addressing homelessness, yet this still remains a major problem in our state. What would you do differently to address homelessness?
First thing is accountability, making sure that the monies that we send from the state to our cities and our counties shows results. Because I think too often and more, Californians don't believe we're getting results for the money we're putting into homelessness. Secondly, we'll try to work with those cities and counties, but it won't just be on housing, it'll also be on mental health. It'll be on social services, because a lot of these folks are homeless, not just because they lost their shelter from before, they lost their job, but because mentally, physically, they weren't capable of keeping that job and keeping that home. The third thing I will do, and has less to do with the homelessness issue directly, is on my watch as governor, if you have shelter, a roof over your head, I want to guarantee you that you're not going to lose it if you're a working Californian. If you work hard you have a roof over your head, but you're barely making ends meet, you're paycheck to paycheck, I'd rather make sure that we are investing in you to keep you housed than see you go on the streets and then have to pull you off the streets to get you housed, because it costs so much more money to pull someone off the streets and get them housed than keeping someone who is in a home in that place.
Do you think that California has gone too far, not far enough, or struck the right balance on criminal justice reform?
It really depends on what the areas are. We were at one point with 3 strikes laws going way too far. At the same time, if you get too lenient, then you make it impossible to be able to try to get people back on the right path. What I think we have to do is take a look at Prop 36, for example. Prop 36 says we want to make sure we're tough on people who are committing crime, but we also want to make sure that we can get them off the path of committing crime. If we don't provide the services that you need, whether it's mental health, drug addiction services, then you're going to keep them on that path. So let's do what we know works. Provide people with the services that let them rehabilitate and get on the right path. That way we can keep people out of prison and in a job.
A number of unions and organizations are supporting Javier Becerra, including SEIU California, who also endorsed Tom Steyer, the California Medical Association that represents tens of thousands of physicians and medical students, and Equality California, who says Becerra has used all of his positions of power to defend the LGBTQ+ community's rights and dignity. Dozens of members of the California state legislature are also supporting Becerra, including Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas. Coming up, if you're looking for more information on the candidates in your voter guide, why everyone might not be equally represented. The race for California governor is wide open, but one issue is taking center stage: affordability, from housing to gas to everyday costs. Our To The Point team is breaking down where the top candidates stand. Stream California's governor race affordability right now on the ABC 10 app. Now, with the primary election comes all of those voter information guides. You probably already have yours. The one sent by the state actually had one viewer reaching out to our team asking why Tom Steyer's candidate statement isn't in there. ABC 10's Jeannie Nguyen looked into it and found out it's not just Tom Steyer without a statement in this year's gubernatorial race.
There are actually multiple gubernatorial candidates who don't have a summary in the official guide for statewide office. And what I found out is it's actually optional to have a statement in the guide. And if you choose to have one, well, you got to read the fine print.
As the June primary election approaches, state and county officials are prepping the necessary materials to send to voters.
Voters in Sacramento County should be receiving, unless they elect to receive one of them online, 2 separate voter information guides in the mail. One comes from us with all the local election information, and another comes from the state with statewide information.
Now, this here is the official voter information guide for statewide offices for the upcoming primary election. You can see that all the candidates are listed in here, but not all of them have their candidate information statements. And the Secretary of State's office says there is a reason for that.
There are voluntary campaign spending limits for certain offices that candidates cannot exceed if they want to have a statement in the guide. Gubernatorial candidates must not spend more than $11,767 for the primary and stay under $19,611 for the general election. Those who accept these terms are allowed to purchase a candidate summary for the voter guide. Legislative analyst Chris McKaylee says the U.S. Supreme Court ruled spending limits are a violation of the First Amendment's freedom of speech.
So all they can do is make those spending limits voluntary. And so one incentive to accept it is inclusion of that statement in the ballot guide that goes to every registered voter.
It's also not cheap to have a candidate statement. According to the Secretary of State candidate statement guidelines, statements for the primary election is $25 per word for up to 250 words. Even though all candidates running for governor do appear listed in the guide, McKaylee says it's up to the voter to do the extra research.
Voters will want to look at the individual candidates' websites, and they have not only thorough information about the candidate's background, but most of them have policy statements and even specific positions on different public policy issues facing California's voters.
Jeannie Nguyen, ABC 10.
And a quick reminder, the primary, June 2nd. The last day to register to vote for the election is May 18th. If you miss that date, you can still vote with a provisional ballot. Ballots were mailed starting May 4th, and drop-off locations opened starting May 5th. In-person vote centers open May 23rd in voter choice counties. As always, thank you so much for joining us. If you missed any of this information or you just want to watch these interviews with the candidates again, you can stream them on our ABC 10 app. Just look for California's governor's race on the home screen. Have a great night. We'll see you next time.
This election, the big battle for Congress in California. As Prop 50 changes the maps, who's running where? We're sitting down with the candidates. Don't miss Your Voice, Your Vote. Local congressional races, Saturday, May 23rd at 10 p.m., only on ABC 10 and the ABC 10 app.